break. In the next few minutes or so, we want to take a minute and remember the Challenger disaster that happened 35 years ago today. We're going to have a whole tribute to that coming up. So you're not going to want to miss that here. A lot of great visuals and really remembering the 7 astronauts who tragically lost their life 35 years ago today. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, and I'm Andrew Kraft once again. Thank you for joining us here on News Now from Fox. We want to play out a story from one of our Fox News correspondents, Kevin Cork. He's remembering the Challenger disaster today, 35 years ago.
Since one of the worst disasters in space history, January 28, 1986, the Challenger space shuttle exploded 73 seconds after liftoff. The rubber seal on one of the rocket boosters became stiff in the cold temperatures, triggering the explosion, killing all 7 people on board, including Krista McAuliffe, who was going to be the first civilian and teacher in space.
I don't think any teacher has ever been more ready to have 2 lessons in my life. I've been preparing these since September, and I just hope everybody tunes in on day 4 now to watch the teacher teaching from space.
The tragedy unfolded live on televisions across the country. Many children gathered in their classrooms to watch the historic event, only to see the shuttle go up in flames. On the ground at Cape Canaveral, hundreds witnessed the doomed launch in person, including McAuliffe's parents. After the explosion, then President Ronald Reagan postponed his State of the Union address, instead delivering a televised eulogy to the American people.
The Challenger 7 were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly.
An investigation later found NASA was aware that the freezing temperatures could cause problems for the rocket boosters, but decided to go ahead with the launch anyway. The Challenger disaster brought NASA's space program to a halt for nearly 3 years. Roughly a decade later, wreckage from the shuttle washed up on a Florida beach. In Washington, I'm Kevin Cork, Fox News.
So that was from Kevin Cork there, one of our Fox News correspondents who put that together for the channel today. We do want to play out for you, though, as well. NASA tweeted this remembrance video out. It's about 2 minutes long, kind of commemorating the disaster in their own way. So let's listen to that and watch this here.
Roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading downrange. Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles for most of the plane, 104%.
Apollo 1 was, with all doubt, a terrible tragedy. As the crew prepared for a simulation, a fire broke out and 3 astronauts' lives were lost. We remember the loss of those lives. We don't stop our quest, we don't stop our mission, but we continue to move forward in that mission of scientific discovery.
We come together today to mourn the loss of 7 brave Americans, to share the grief that we all feel, and perhaps in that sharing to find the strength to bear our sorrow and the courage to look for the seeds of hope. Sometimes when we reach for the stars, we fall short, but we must pick ourselves up again and press on. We bid you goodbye. We will never forget you.
Here we have the Space Path choo-choo train coming down the tunnel, and mostly work, but a whole lot of fun up here.
This day has brought terrible news and great sadness to our country. At 9 o'clock this morning, Mission Control in Houston lost contact with our space shuttle Columbia. Mankind is led into the darkness beyond our world by the inspiration of discovery and the longing to understand. Our journey into space will go on. In the skies today, we saw destruction and tragedy. Yet farther than we can see, there's comfort and hope.
And that was just a really moving tribute that NASA put together and posted from their official Twitter account today. NASA does take this day as a reminder not only to the victims of the Challenger disaster, but also to the Apollo 1 disaster that we touched on here yesterday, the anniversary 54 years ago. Yesterday, the Apollo 1 disaster, and February 1st, 2003, the anniversary of the Columbia space shuttle disaster. I remember that one. I was a very young kid. I think I was in the 5th or the 6th grade when that happened. But so NASA takes the time at this time of year to remember all three of those very tragic space disasters as those astronauts put their lives in harm's way to extend, human knowledge of the outer bounds of space. We do have just some reaction as well from social media on this remembrance 35 years later. This tweet coming from the National Air and Space Museum, one of the finest museums in our country. It's one of the Smithsonian museums, saying, remembering the crew of STS-51L. 35 years ago today, the launch ended in tragedy when Space Shuttle Challenger and crew were lost 73 seconds after liftoff. This is a picture you've been seeing many remembrances of today of the crew: Allison Onizuka, Krista McAuliffe, Greg Jarvis, Judith Resnick, Mike Smith, Dick Scobie, and Ron McNair. The presidential historian Michael Beschloss tweeting today, what is your memory of the Challenger catastrophe 35 years ago today? We're going to take this opportunity as well here on NewsNow from Fox. You can tweet at us at NewsNow Fox. Tell us, what do you remember about that day if you were old enough? How do you remember your feelings that day? One of the major news events in the last 35, 40 years. So tweet us your memories of that day, and we'll read them out here on air at NewsNow. This coming from an account called Old School 80s. Wanted to include this because this was the Time magazine cover, January 28th, 1986. 35 years ago, the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster took place. One of the iconic covers of Time magazine in the 80s for sure. And also the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, took a moment today for this bugler to play taps on the grounds and in the skies at NASA's Johnson Space Center on this day of remembrance. A ceremony at the astronaut tree grove includes a T-38 flyover to honor the fallen crew members of Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia with their families. And there that bugler is playing taps, I believe, at the astronaut tree grove just outside Johnson Space Center there in Houston, Texas. And lastly, just wanted to include this as well. This was the front page of the New York Times, coming from the Twitter account New York Times Archives. When it happened, the day after it happened, 7 killed when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded after the takeoff on this day in 1986. It was the worst accident in the history of the American space program. And there's the front page from the day after of the New York Times. All right, for all of us here, that's going to end our tribute to all three of these space disasters. But today, January 28th, 1986, 35 years later, those 7 astronauts were lost in the Challenger space disaster here. We're going to take a quick commercial break, then find some more content, live events, and stories for you to cover here in the last remaining hours we have on this Thursday night. Thanks for sticking with us, and we'll see you in a few minutes.